How you doing, Mark?
Hi, how are you? Sorry for the delay with all that. I actually had set up the timer to get going, and it just basically kicked out on me. And I went, what's going on here? So you're absolutely right. I should have sent that to you via email. But thanks for that.
No worries.
Good,
I think,
good.
do I look a little bit dark here?
Just a little bit.
All right, let me turn on a bit of a better light. Hang on.
Sure, no worries.
All right, that should help.
Yeah, it does actually. Thanks for that. Yes. So how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good, 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 good. Yeah, it's amazing how basically time absolutely flies. You were actually overseas again, were you?
No, maybe 3 weeks ago.
Okay, cool, good.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, just to give
And I need to try to keep this to about 30 minutes if we can do that.
Yeah, no worries at all. Actually, I'm expecting that that's all we really need. Anyways, what I'm going to be doing just is simply focusing more on the integration between the crossing points between what customers are looking for in terms of imagery, what they should be looking for, and what photographers can actually try to create for content. That's really the intersection of those two ideas. All right.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So we'll get the ball rolling over here. 3, 2, 1, and welcome everyone, and thanks for joining me. And today I'm going to be interviewing David Meerman Scott. David is an author of 10 books in this series, editor of 6, and probably more popular one is one called The New Rules of Marketing and PR. Now, David's actually flown all over the world. I think you've covered something like 40 some odd countries in the world in your work.
42 countries that I've spoken. I'm a list guy, Mark. So 42 countries that I've spoken in. My books are in 29 languages, and I've been to 102 countries in my lifetime, and I've delivered presentations on all 7 continents. So there are a few stats for you, more than you asked for.
That's fabulous, though, because it actually does help and give us a bit of context in terms of how appropriate a conversation is going to be. Because as I mentioned to you in our chat online before, is I'm finding one of the questions that a lot of people are asking me as a photographer, and that other photographers are also asking me, because I do a bit of coaching with other photographers in the world of 360 photography and Google Street View, that they really are struggling to get that message across in terms of what exactly is the right kind of content in terms of images, and also the kinds of things that customers should actually be asking for, because often they don't have very much of an idea as to really what should they be asking from their photographer to create for them, so that they can then go back and think through exactly what kind of an image they should be putting online for them.
Right. Well, so I think just to start from a broad perspective, I think that first of all, companies tend to have a few mistakes that they do when they do their marketing. Number one is they tend to talk way too much about their own products and services, and they tend to use images way too often about their own products and services. I see that again and again and again and again and again. So rather than just hype your latest product offering, is there something that you can do in terms of images, in terms of text, in terms of video, in terms of all different types of content that can showcase not your products and services, but how you and your company solve people's problems? And so I think there's a really big differentiator there between two different concepts. Of one is focusing on products and services, and the other one is really just helping people to solve problems. So, and I think images, photographs come in quite strongly there. The second thing big mistake that companies make, and I see this all the time, and you and I have spoken about this before,
Mhm.
is the use of inane stock photography. I mean,
Yeah.
gosh, stock photography has just become this incredible way that lazy marketers push images out into their world, and it's ridiculous. I mean, the classic photographs that you see again and again and again, and one of the most popular parts of the presentations I deliver is when I do a riff about stock photography, and I've done that in hundreds of different presentations around the world, and it doesn't matter what business, because every business has the cliche stock photo that they use. So, for example, in the sort of business to business product space, like sort of technology companies like Cisco or IBM, companies like that, and I'm not necessarily saying these particular companies, but that kind of product offering, what they will typically do is they will use stock images of people in a conference room. So happy multicultural people sitting around a conference room table, smiling sweetly. You'll also then have some technology companies will use images of people staring into computers.
Yeah.
Another cliche stock photo. In the financial world, this one kills me. In the financial world, there's often the shot of the happy seniors, wonderful looking people in their 60s or 70s wearing white. I don't know why they're always wearing white, walking along a beach.
It
And
must be
this
something
is
about being close to the angels or something. I don't know.
maybe I don't know. I don't know what it is, but that's what people always use when it's a financial firm, because and I mean, it's ridiculous because it assumes that you have to be old to invest invest in the financial markets, and
Mhm.
number two, it assumes that when you are happily invested in the financial markets, all you want to do is wear white clothing and walk on beaches, and then another example that I talk about a lot, which makes me crack up, is the photo that a lot of restaurants use and a lot of food companies use, which is women laughing alone with salad. And my gosh, you see that again and again and again, is these young women, and they have a salad and a fork sucking the salad and a big smile on their face. So
Yeah.
so it's a fun riff because
Mm.
humor is truth. And
Mm.
that riff in my presentation is humorous because people recognize the truth in that. The truth is that companies use stock photos way too much. It's totally a cliche. And they need to use real photographers to deliver real content, to deliver real images, whether it's representative of the people in their company or representative of their customers or representative of the products and services that they offer and the ways that they solve problems for people.
Yeah, that's absolutely. It's interesting because I do run into exactly that situation where, photographers are asking me exactly how do I actually explain this to the customer that they really should be getting me to take some more photos of and remove the stock images that they've actually got. Even background images in for menus is one of the ones that we run into quite often. Where
Yeah.
they've actually just grabbed a couple of images that look something like their dish. Well, no, it's not.
No, not a good idea.
Yeah, exactly. And this brings me, one of the things that I speak often a lot to people about is there's the key 6 points about making sure that images, and maybe you can touch on one or two of these points about how that relates, which is authenticity,
Yeah.
relevancy, recency, quality, clarity, and availability. Those are the key words that I try to use in my discussion with people.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, the first two, I think they were the first two, the ones that immediately jump to my mind as being important. Authenticity, incredibly important.
Mm.
People see through when you're not being authentic. People have a very, very strong radar about that. They get it. They understand it. That's why stock photos don't work, because they immediately understand that that's not really a photograph of your food. That's not really a photograph of people in your restaurant. That's not really a photograph of your customers or your employees. They get it instantly, within a millisecond, they know. So that goes a really long way with authenticity. And I think that people are very, very understanding of someone in a photograph who doesn't look like a model. So you wear glasses, so you have, a little bit of a funky smile, and you're not wearing the perfect designer clothes, but that projects authenticity. If it's an image of a product, if it's an image of food, if, there's not the perfect, drop of moisture on the glass at just the right spot that's going down, that the stock photo has, people get it. It's a glass of beer in your restaurant. They get it. So authenticity, I think, is really, really important. And a good photo, I think, projects that kind of authenticity. You also mentioned one of, I think your word was recency, but I think that's also a critical one. I speak and write a lot about a concept I call newsjacking.
Right.
And newsjacking is the art and science of injecting your ideas into a breaking news story. What newsjacking means is that anybody and anyone listening in on this this discussion can do this. If you are watching what's happening in the news and you can quickly comment on what's going on in the news, then you have an opportunity to get quoted in the media and to get noticed by potential customers. So that is an awesome example of recency at work. What can you put out that's right now? One of the reasons that social networks are so popular, especially Facebook and Twitter and others, is that it's about recency. It's about what's happening right now. Twitter is about this second. Facebook, if you don't look at something on Facebook, it drops off of your timeline. So those things can be communicated with images as well. One of the things that always makes me laugh is I frequently appear on mainstream television. Go into a studio and do a television interview, and sometimes they'll have a backdrop behind me of the city. And it's very rarely does the weather in the backdrop match the weather that's actually outside. Right now I live in Boston, and I'm going to turn my screen around so you can see out my window. We have no leaves on the trees right now here in Boston.
Absolutely. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So showing a background of trees and from a location in Boston is ridiculous. Showing a location where there's no snow on the ground when in fact there is snow in Boston in that moment is ridiculous. So and I think that also includes stock photos. Includes photographs where an organization really ought to have things that are not only recent, but that they can be cycled through depending on the seasons, on the type of customer, on things like what sporting event is in season during that time. And there's all sorts of elements of that recency that's important. And some of it's you can tell if photographs are more than a few years old just by the clothing people are wearing in the cars that are in the background, things like that. So, or if there's a newspaper or a magazine lying around, you can tell that that is an image that's several years old, and companies ought to be swapping them out.
It's really because, and one of the things, obviously, with your, I'm sure you're familiar with the Google My Business and Google Street View, and what virtual photographers, what we do, we're actually really, in a lot of cases, creating that recency, especially when our images are showing 360 content of a street that's actually been recently reconstructed. And you can see the timeline differences between the two. It makes a huge difference when people are seeing that this is what it looks like now, so that people will use it when they get there. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, one of the other things I wanted to talk to you about, or at least bring up, is this wonderful chart that you put together with a couple of guys that live not too far away from me here in Australia. That chart is particularly interesting. Could you maybe mention a little bit about that and how that can be used by businesses?
Yeah, sure. It's called a web marketing planning template. and it's available for free. Perhaps you'll link to it so people can find it, or you can go to my Twitter or my blog to find it. Yeah, so it's I worked with Blue Wire Media. They're a Australia-based marketing agency, and what happened was I was talking and writing about the ideas of creating web marketing starting a long time ago, starting almost 20 years ago. And the guys at Blue Wire Media were also doing the same. And I wrote a blog post about, I guess it was about 8 years ago, I wrote a blog post where I sort of said, hey, it'd be really cool to come up with kind of a one-page marketing plan kind of thing that would help you to understand how you can create great content on the web. And then these guys reached out to me and said, yeah, we were thinking the exact same thing. Why don't we collaborate on it? Which is exactly what we did. So I think it was about 8 years ago, we put out the first version 1.0 of this template. And we're now up to version 9.1 because we're constantly updating it. But what it does is it's 2 pages. It's in color. One page is a way that you can jot down your goals for a marketing initiative. Now, we said at the beginning of the conversations that I think it's really important when you're starting your marketing to start from a perspective of what are the problems that your potential customers face, number one. Number two, try to get out of the habit of just talking about your products and services. Those are just a few things. So those are a few things that are included in this template. On the other page is a very interesting visual representation of essentially the whole web ecosystem and how social networking fits into the ecosystem, blogs, videos, how that all fits into the ecosystem where people find you, then they interact with you in the middle, and then on the other side, they do something that you want them to do. You know, maybe they subscribe to your newsletter, maybe they subscribe to your blog, maybe they download a research report or whatever it might be. And it's just a way that all of that kind of gets put into 2 pages. And I referred to it a lot myself. You know, I wrote it, I created it, but I look at it myself because it's kind of my own reminder about how simple marketing can be, but yet so many people make it out to be so complex. And I mentioned I'm in version 9.1. We're in version 9.1 right now, but between the different versions over the last 8 or so years, this thing has been downloaded something like 1 million times. So a lot of people out there have used it.
Yeah, it's really, when I looked at it at first, and in fact, actually, I reached out to the guys and I said to them, do you guys have a version that's simpler, like, or that's broken down into smaller steps? And they said, no, this is the simple version. And
it is simple, yeah.
It is, because, you know, the challenge I think that a lot of people have nowadays in business is they look at that kind of a chart and they actually don't really know where to start. Although it's not that complicated, you know, it's usually just bloody start, pick one. Find one that you know you can get your teeth in and actually do something with, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And that actually is sometimes the problem is they actually don't even have the chart to start with. So that's one of those things that I think is definitely worth distributing to people and sharing more about.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, you know, the reaction to simplicity, Mark, is something that I think a lot of people get paralyzed because they think they have to do everything. So, you know, they think, oh my gosh, I have to be on Snapchat and Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn, and oh my gosh, I need to do a blog, and I have to do a YouTube channel. I need to be on Facebook Live, and I have to do create infographics, and I have to do all this stuff. You don't. You know, I'm the guy who wrote the book on marketing. I've got 10 books altogether. I've sold over a million copies of my books. One of my books, The New Rules of Marketing and PR, is probably the best known marketing book in the world. I don't do all that stuff. You know, I'm the guy who wrote the book, and I'm telling you, I don't do all that stuff. So the challenge is to say, okay, well, what are the things I'm good at? What are the things that I think I should do? And how can I pick and choose, you know, maybe two or three things or 4 things and do them really well, rather than try to do 20 things and do them poorly?
one of the things that I find most funny about exactly what you're saying is that one of the worst things that photographers do is they don't take a lot of great photos of themselves because they're usually behind the camera, so it's hard for them to be able to
Yeah.
tell their story. So you'll actually, I see this often where their websites look worse than the clients' sites that they've actually put photos up for, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That is good. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw those. When I spoke at a Tony Robbins event in January, there's an awesome photographer there. His name is Raj. He's photographed me at a bunch of Tony Robbins events, and he had that challenge is that he's never in the photograph. So he did something actually pretty cool. What he did was he launched a drone from the stage,
Right.
and the drone went up, and then I invited him onto the stage, and we had planned this ahead of time. So he was on the stage and he was taking a picture of me, but at the same time, the drone was taking a picture of both of us.
Fabulous.
And so
Yeah.
he got a brilliant freaking shot as a result of that, of
Yeah.
him on the stage taking a photograph of me at a Tony Robbins event with 1,500 people in the audience. So it's pretty awesome. And I think if you're clever and you figure out a way that you can come up with an interesting shot, I think it's totally possible to come up with something of you in action that's not just kind of a selfie approach, but something that can work to promote your own business.
Absolutely. This is one of the areas where I'm actually just moving into using, from a promotional perspective, the 360 images, because in fact, with 360, I can be in the shot. You know, I can
Yeah.
just basically, do the spin and stand inside of the shot at that point in time. And that actually is now is a new, with Facebook now providing the ability to publish 360 images, they've gained a lot of popularity. And now we're even moving into the world where 3D photography is actually just on the edge. So it's quite exciting times when it comes to actually being able to find new means and new media formats to be able to promote basically what we do as content creators. There's one
Yeah.
of the things I wanted to run past you too, is because you actually, this is more almost of a personal interest. You used the Grateful Dead as one of your first books to write about in terms of how they used marketing. And I've always thought because I'm actually a big Rush fan, which is very similar in terms of that same kind of following, right?
Are
And
you Canadian, by the way?
yeah, I am actually. No
Okay,
surprise, right?
well, first the first clue was instantaneously there was no Australian accent. Then I
Right.
heard a couple of twangs of Canadian showing through, and as soon as you mentioned Rush, then three things in a row, you had to be Canadian.
That's right. Yeah, I tell people I grew up in a little small town about halfway between Toronto and Shania Twain. It's just a little, but it's a great little place. And one of the things that we actually had in Canada was very much the same thing with that same following. Lots of people did also follow the Grateful Dead, but that concept that they are in a niche where they can tell a story, no matter which way they go, they could change practically everything about their sound, and still people would follow them because they've developed that relationship with their clients, their audience.
Well,
And
here's something interesting
Mhm.
about the Grateful Dead and images is
Mm.
that the Grateful Dead were one of the very few bands in the early days and continue to be one of the few bands that allow fans to bring cameras into the audience. So back in the day before smartphones, it was rare to see a camera at a show.
Mhm.
And many times when a band would tell security, like no cameras allowed, and even printed on the ticket, it would say no cameras allowed, because back in the day it was okay. You can't do this. You can't take our images of us. And it also, by the way, included recording devices, audio recording devices. The Grateful Dead actually said, "Sure, why not? Well, you can
Mhm.
bring your camera in. You can bring your recording device in. You can record our concerts."
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that was one of the elements of the book I wrote, Marketing Lessons from the Grateful Dead, is that the Grateful Dead built an incredible social network before Mark Zuckerberg was even born, because the Grateful Dead encouraged people to create and share content, whereas every other band said no.
Mhm.
So it was really interesting how they encouraged photography back in the day when, I mean, this is, of course, pre-smartphone, so not everyone was carrying cameras around. Very few people were carrying cameras around. But if you brought that camera into a show, yeah, sure, no problem. Come on in.
Yeah, and that would really relate back to one of the earlier things that you talked about, which was the ungated publication, which is where telling people to just say, you know what, go ahead and have fun with it, because the more you talk about it, the more my popularity will grow, which is
Exactly
quite a
right.
simple
Yeah.
concept.
It's a very
Yeah.
simple concept. It's a great concept, and provide stuff out there. I mean, you know, everybody wants to get paid. I get that. We're all in business because we want to feed our families and live in a nice place. So I get that, but the more you give away, the more you get back. I mean, it's kind of an airy fairy kind of concept, but I really believe in giving gifts. I really believe that the more you offer, the more you get. And so, how can a photographer benefit from that? How can a photographer take advantage of, providing gifts for people that then might be able to bring back to them? I mean, uh, how, I don't know. I mean, have a catalog of photographs that you provide for free to people rather than
Mhm.
the inane stock photos of real people, that they can use for free, with a license to be able to use in their materials. Perhaps for free shooting nonprofit groups, just to get the attention, because then that attention might then drive for-profit business. Now, of course, it doesn't mean, I'm not suggesting you give your work away all the time. I'm not suggesting that, but in your world, what is it that you can do that you can provide for free, that will generate attention, that will bring people back to you and grow your business even more quickly? The Grateful Dead allowed people to record their shows. Nobody else did that, and it allowed them to actually become the most popular touring band in history. They sold over 1 billion concert tickets, $1 billion worth of concert tickets.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty, and you're absolutely right. And I think about it from the point of view of how this works, whether it be a photographer or, for that matter, our clients, their ability to actually even give away some of the images of an event or something like that, where they actually bring in a photographer and say, tell you what, we'll actually have the images included as part of the event. That can be very, very useful for them to actually sell people in place, because often what I think is challenging for organizations that actually have a nice looking place is they need to show not just how good the place looks like, but that people like to go there, and it's filled with
Yeah.
happy, shiny people that are actually real people as opposed to posed.
Well, and then I think you're absolutely right there. And then bringing in the recency effect that you brought up, and my concept of newsjacking. What could you do to get those images out instantly?
Mhm.
What can you do to get them out right now? I mean, it could be as simple as, I mean, almost all photographers these days have an Instagram feed. How many photographs are you pushing out there at the shoots you're doing? Uh, and then linking back to the client. You're in a restaurant doing a shoot. Push it out on your Instagram, push out some cool images on your Instagram, and then link it back to the site and build a following that way. All sorts of interesting things that can be done.
Absolutely. That's great. Great ideas. Thank you very much for that, because this is actually, I think, one of the areas where, in terms of content creation, it seems so simple, because yes, we all have a mobile phone in our pockets, so everybody's a photographer in one way. But we do also tend to forget about the fact that sometimes bringing someone else to take the photos, it allows you to think about just doing your business very well, and where photographers can fit in and help businesses in creating that content in a recent and authentic way.
Yeah.
So yeah, it really is a good merger of those ideas. Um, but I just want to ask you, just because obviously time's pressing. I know that you're limited with time availability today, but where can people find you, and where do they need to be able to get in touch with you?
Sure. So I'll give you a couple of places. My Twitter is DM Scott, so DMSCOTT. And then from there, you'll be able to link to my blog and my website. I would also suggest that if that concept of newsjacking was at all interesting, just go to newsjacking.com, and I've got some free resources there. You can download an infographic, you can download a description of what newsjacking is. So that's a resource to go to as well. And then if you want to see my riff on stock photography, Let me just make sure that this will pop up. I'll do it while we're talking.
Sure.
Google the phrase, "Who the hell are these people?" Who?
Right.
Let me just make sure it comes up. Who the hell are these people? And let's see if it comes up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the number 4 or 5
Sure.
listing on my
I'll
blog
actually
comes
put
up.
in, if you're open to it, what I'll do is I'll actually just pop that as a link back down through the show notes, basically.
Yeah,
And
please do that. But also, I
Mhm.
would just make an observation that
Mhm.
my riff on how bad stock photography is one of my most popular blog posts. And if you
Mhm.
enter that phrase, "Who the hell are these people?" My blog post pops up. So it's kind of interesting how much people hate stock photos.
I agree with you. It is the bane. I understand why people use them. A lot of graphic designers have a requirement for it. Like sky shots. Well, there's nothing in it. That makes good sense. You want to use those types of
Yeah, sure.
speakers.
I
Yeah,
get it. I get it. If you want a
yeah,
shot of New York, if you want a shot of New York City, maybe you don't want to get on a plane and fly to New York City. You just use a stock photo. I get it. But a
yeah,
stock photo to represent your customers or a stock photo to represent your client, your employees is ridiculous.
yeah.
Or
Exactly.
your food or your product or whatever. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely. Super. Really appreciate your time, Dave. Looking forward
My
to speaking
pleasure.
with you again, and we'll connect up probably sometime in the near future.
Great. Thanks, Mark. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you. And there we go. Thank you very much. Much
Yeah,
appreciated. I hope
you
that
got
was
it.
good. Some content that also you can be able to reuse too.
Yeah, sure.
Um,
I'll push that out.
yeah, because it's actually, as you can tell, like the challenge that I actually have, just to give you a bit of context of why this works so well, is I'm just going down the path of doing presentations myself for telling people about the white elephant in the room, which is the Google My Business page, and how often I see the photos that are in the Google My Business page are absolutely horrible. And it's the first
Yeah.
thing people see in a search before they even get in
Yep.
on the website. It's actually more important in a lot of cases than the client's website.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So,
Especially for those people who are in the business of images. I mean, it's
mhm.
yeah, absolutely incredibly important. So yeah.
Yeah.
So this has been fun. You're a good interviewer. I like speaking to people who are skilled at interviewing, and which you are. So good for that.
Well, thank you for that.
How long have
Yes,
you been in Australia?
I've actually been in Australia now since 2008.
Oh,
Moved
that's for a
here.
while.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah, yeah. I've been here for a little while now, so I'm actually quite settled. I'm about 100 kilometers north of Sydney,
Okay.
and yeah,
So wait,
so
where that is
Central Coast, the Central Coast. It's
okay.
what Gosford,
Okay. So
Terrigal.
is it Newcastle up there? Is that right?
Yeah, that's actually north of me. I'm in between Newcastle and Sydney.
I gotcha. Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah. So
Yeah.
beautiful area. We got and we're close to the Hunter Valley where the wine
Yeah.
region is, so it's
Yeah. I've
wonderful
been
that
there a
way
couple
too.
of times. I always
Have
enjoyed
you?
doing that. Yeah. Yeah. When I travel to somewhere, either that I haven't been or, that I don't get to very often, I try my best to see if I can get at least a couple days to poke around. So one of the times I went to Australia, rented a car and just drove up the Hunter Valley and checked it out.
Yeah, yeah, cool. In fact, actually, I've done a few of the wineries there. Wynwood Estate and Tatler Wines are clients of mine where I've done their virtual tours. And yeah, I think they're great places to go and hang out. I'll tell you, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Really enjoy it. Yeah. All
All right,
righty.
Mark. Hey, thanks very much.
Thanks again. Appreciate it.
Okay. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye now.